Check. 1, 2, 1, 2.
Yo, what's up?
Right. So, welcome all to another episode of the Good Anime Palette Podcast. We're doing another bits and pieces recording. This time round, so I've sort of commandeered the mic for the last couple of BPs. So this time round, let's have Jason sort of share his 2 cents. What's been racking his brain? What's on his mind right now in terms of anime, manga, and everything in between?
As I was telling Will kind of off air and in between recording sessions, it's there were a number of topics that I had in mind, but I was not like certain or confident in like, oh yeah, this is the one that I want to bring up, right? So I have like a number of them, right? But I think one that I'm gonna put my foot down and go all in on now is talking about spin-offs.
Okay.
Anime spin-offs.
Right.
Which can also tie tangentially into, coincidentally, movies, which we watched recently. The Haikyuu, dumpster battle.
Now, when you mention movies, like what specifically do you mean? Do you mean like movies that are, part of the canon, or movies that are like a bit more like sort of standalone, like a lot of like the One Piece movies, like a lot of the My Hero Academia movies?
They're all included in this discussion because they're kind of spin-offs. That's what I kind of mean.
Are they spin-offs though? If the movies are part of the canon?
Well, that's kind of what I wanted to talk about. I think Mugen Train also being like the one that always comes to mind when it comes to these sorts of discussions as well, right?
Right. Okay. So let's get started then in terms of like just spin-offs in general.
Yeah, I think when people think of anime spin-offs, they go one of several ways, right? The first thing that they think of is redundant, as in it's optional, as in they're there to cash in on the IP, to hold over, to keep the property in people's minds, to hold over until the full-fledged TV season comes out. Because usually, for better or for worse, those are the premier kind of thing that continues the IP. Again, I'm excluding things like, Hosoda, Studio Ghibli, where movies are their main kind of output and product.
Right. You're talking about like movies that are tied to like a long-running series.
Yeah. The other thing I also want to mention is when you think spin-offs, you usually think them being inferior to the actual anime proper, right? A lot of people would, for example, Bungo Stray Dogs had Bungo Stray Dogs 1, right? I think Overlord had like a bunch of like little spin-offs that are very like chibi-esque and skit-based. And Attack on Titan Junior High. And there's a Demon Slayer one as well. But you don't necessarily look at that with a lot of you don't look at those with like a critical eye and being like, oh, yo, this thing fucking slaps. You're like, oh, this is cool, I guess. A tangent, I guess.
I'm excuse me. I'm kind of conflicted with your statement there, because there definitely is an air of truth in that the general perception of seeing a spin-off and the immediate thought of, oh, this is just a redundant piece of work, or this is just a lower quality of what we're watching. But
no, that's like your gut reaction, though.
But at the same time, it's like, I don't think that's what the purpose of a spin-off really is, though.
Mm-hmm.
Right? In essence, a spin-off is meant to have some sort of deviation from the original material.
Mm-hmm.
Right? It still has the core concepts of it, but at the very least, it shows either like a different perspective or a different style to what you've originally perceived as like the mainstay series.
Right.
So some stuff that you've mentioned, right? Like the junior highs, the wands for Bungo Stray Dogs and whatnot. Of course, they're meant to be taken as what they are. They are a more comedic, a more like slice of life, a more chill version of what tends to be some really intense shonen series.
Right.
And so to go in and think that these are inferior works, I think it kind of does the disservice of the point of a spin-off
It does.
in the first place.
But you cannot deny that when you hear a spin-off, right? The gut reaction, regardless of the actual product,
Now,
whether it's warranted or not.
Is this your perspective, or is this what you perceive to be the general perspective?
Both.
Right. So I'm of a different camp here.
Okay, yeah.
Because of the fact that the purpose of a spin-off is legitimately to put a different spin on what you've been watching.
Right.
Right? So let's say, for example, Isekai Quartet.
Yeah.
Right? Massive spin-off from like major series, major isekais.
And a crossover, too.
But very much well-loved.
yeah,
Right?
for sure.
You also then have the My Hero Academia spin-off of like the Vagabonds, not the Vagabond, like the one where
The edgy one, right?
yes,
where it's like the manga is like kick-ass version of My Hero Academia. Vigilante.
yeah, Vigilante. That's
yeah.
it. That's why I thought Vagabond because of the letter V. But
I heard it's really good.
it's
always on my plan to read.
I've read it. It is really good,
Oh, I should probably
Right?
get on that.
right? And then you also have Cells at Work, Code Black.
So, okay. So the reason why, so there were like I said, like several ways people will look at, right? The last thing that I wanted to mention of how people interpret spin-offs is when the spin-offs are actually crazy good for no good reason and outshines the series proper. I think Cells at Work Code Black is a decent example. The one that I always gravitate to is Scientific Railgun versus Magical Index. Now,
Is that what the whole discussion is based off of? Your
Nope.
love for a certain magical scientific railgun?
what about Full Metal Panic?
Yes.
That's a spin-off that I would argue is more successful than its proper series. And also a really old one is Magical Girl Lyrical Nanoha. No one I know, including myself at the time, did not know it was a spin-off of something called Triangle Heart. Because in Triangle Heart, this random supporting character all of a sudden gets her own series that outshines the series proper. Then on the same lines, it's a fine line because you also try to like, well, how much do you deviate from the series proper, right? Because as you said, it's a spin-off, it's a tangent, right? But then I always think of One Piece Red recently, which is, to my knowledge, and correct me if I'm wrong, Will, a wholly original character being introduced into the universe. It is an anime original movie, so to speak, right? It's not part of the One Piece manga. It has the blessing of Oda, right? He's probably very involved in it and is extremely successful. But the character itself is not part of the manga.
Well, no, it focuses on Shanks and still Luffy.
Right.
But in terms of it being like a standalone thing,
yeah.
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 I mean, it's definitely very different in the sense that it's not just focused on the Straw Hat Pirates.
Yeah.
That's about it.
And it's a new character.
Yeah. So based on what you've said so far, though, I think like you're kind of also like deconstructing your preconceived notions of what a spinoff is, where like the immediate thought of it being a derivative version of what you're originally watching, I feel that that's kind of like a very old stereotyping of what a spinoff is, much in the same way that before, like, you know, we're kind of attaching it in the same way of it being a filler.
Yes.
Which I think is also kind of like a misjudged way of perceiving what a spinoff is.
Yes.
Yeah.
Especially with how filler
So
was used.
I actually don't know what your stance is then, because you went in on one side where you're saying that spin-offs perceived to be like inferior, but then you also then say that there's actually some really good spin-offs, some that actually outshine the original series. So where are you on the line of this?
I'm of the line that I just wanted to talk about spin-offs.
Yeah, but I get that, but like, what's your take on it? Like, where do you where do you sit in terms of like what a spinoff is, what its impact is, and whether or not it's relevant to you?
Okay, a spinoff is, I think, pretty self-explanatory in that it is a tangent that is not exactly the series proper, but it is related. It's a tangent. Right?
Yeah.
It's a spin-off. I think no one will it's an offshoot side story.
And I think because like, at least what you said again, this may not this may not be like your actual like feelings about spin-offs, but the word spin-off itself has so many different variations.
Absolutely.
And the one that you're mentioning is like a very specific kind of way of looking at a spin-off. And it tends to be the more derogatory way of looking at a spin-off, in that it's just a shit version of what you're originally watching. And that, I feel, is like, whilst some people may feel right to think that way, I think it's also a very short-sighted way.
It is.
Right?
And I'm not trying to dispute that. In fact, if anything, I am trying to tell you what my thought process is and how that has shifted in, like, I don't know, recent years, because it has shifted. But you also have to understand where I was coming from in terms of my mindset going in, because we also
it was just the delivery was a bit like,
well, yeah, but like at the same time, when I think of fillers, right, I think of like the Naruto filler episodes.
Yeah, I mean, like, fillers have always have been like a bit of a contentious point for people, but again, it was also, you know, a product of its time, and the fact that production studios essentially were forced to make so many episodes that it caught up to the source, and all they could do was just slow things down and wait for the source material to actually have enough stuff to adapt.
Yeah, and I would argue nowadays you don't really get pretty much any fillers.
Because the fact that now we have a standardized system of how to produce anime, rather than letting a series run for 50 to like 500 episodes in one go, unless you're One Piece, then you're kind of set to do either like a cur, a double cur, or a split cur. So you kind of know predefined how much you need to produce within a set amount of time, and also how much time you have to be able to produce all that. So when it comes to doing like spin-offs, a lot of it now is, well, we managed to make all this stuff, but there was also a lot of stuff that wasn't able to be made, right? Take, for example, Horimiya Piece.
Yeah,
right?
That's a good one.
That's in essence, it is a spin-off. It's the in-between stories that were not told in the original series. Was it well received?
As in the anime original series, yeah.
Was it well received? Very much so.
Yes.
Horimiya Piece, people love that shit. What about, for example, like you mentioned, right, a certain scientific railgun, right, compared to Magical Index, right? Like, what was the spin-off aspect of that? Was it focusing on a different plot? Was it focusing on a different character? Was it
different
focusing...
character?
There you go, right? Konosuba, you know, magical explosion, whatever the fuck that
Megumi.
Yeah, right? Focusing on a specific character, focusing on a different take on a certain plot. Vigilante for My Hero Academia. What if being a hero is actually bad and you are the bad guy, but you're trying to do, you know, the world some good by using your powers for good, despite people perceiving you to be some sort of maniacal, overpowered villain, right? Like, the way that I think spin-offs have become now is essentially an expansion of the world, of the lore that the original series, whether it was a manga, an anime, or whatever it was, and giving people a wider perspective of how to appreciate the series overall, right? Whether or not you want to contain it within that world, that's very much up to you, right? You could there's definitely a world where if people, like, I mean, would you consider Magical Index and a certain scientific railgun to be within the same world, or is it because of the fact that you like one so much more than the other that there is that line of separation between trying to attach them as the same property?
They are both in the same world because they have events that intersect with each other, but told from a different perspective.
Right. But so that you wouldn't be like, this one is so much better than the original that it's de facto own thing. Like, there is still recognition that this series bore out of the original.
Absolutely.
Right?
Absolutely. And whether or not you agree with a railgun being better than Magical Index to me is just like your opinion, no matter how you're in the overwhelming majority or minority or whatever of that statement. But I think the other thing is just talking about, as you accurately pointed out, the more negative, almost like derogatory tone that people have, myself included to a certain degree, of when you hear tangents in spin-offs. Because Ranking of Kings had a spin-off.
It was decently received. It was definitely not the same thing because it was a lot more slow paced, a lot more jovial. But there were still people who appreciated it.
Yeah, and it's not to say I didn't appreciate things like Attack on Titan Junior High. I mean, it was an interesting.
There was also that Levi spin-off they had before as well, which we were just focused on Levi.
Isn't that like the one where it's like based on the light novel or like a manga? It's like Before the Fall or something like that.
Yeah.
There's one that focuses on Anna, I think.
The name, I think it's Attack on Titan No Regrets.
That's okay, yeah. So,
I mean, let's not forget that Pluto itself, the sleeper hit of 2023, was originally a spin-off.
What do you mean originally? It is a spin-off
right?
of Astro Boy.
Well, I think I say originally because a lot of people probably don't know what Pluto is, considering it's been in cryogenic frozen state for like well over like 2 decades.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. No, I totally get it. So it is varied, but
the perception you mentioned, the negative one, of course, like that exists still, right? The fact that like if you loved like the original series so much, and then all of a sudden like we're gonna focus on that character. Oh, fuck that character! I don't want that character. Why do I want to focus on that? I want to focus on like the main shit. I want to like get to the crux of like what rocks my socks off when I'm watching Attack on Titan or Bungo Stray Dogs or like Konosuba and whatnot. Right? I don't give a fuck about Megumin. I don't give a fuck about Levi. I don't give a fuck.
Or you give a fuck about Megumin, but you also give a fuck about the team, the party of the quartet.
Yeah, you want to see Megumin as the team member, not as the individual.
Yeah, like you acknowledge that she's awesome as a character, but she's also part of the team at the same time, right? And it's such a varied subject because when I think about, for example, Mugen Train, it is from the manga perspective not a spin-off.
Well, of course it's not a spin-off.
Right.
Like, how would it be a spin-off when it is legitimately taking source from the anime, from the manga itself, and then, like, in essence, if you're just looking at it as the formats rather than, like, being, like, a 12 or 24 episode cur.
I mean, they adapted it, right? Into 6?
Yeah, but I mean, like, you also can't say it's a spin-off simply because it's a movie.
No,
right?
I understand.
Yeah, but I understand that there might be people that perceive it that way, right? So
because people
that's the hard part. I mean, like,
yeah, that's what I mean.
I think it's easier to sort of look into that when you think about JJK 0.
Yeah,
right, because it is a prequel movie that if you just read the manga, you probably wouldn't have known. But this is still something that's important to the overall series. Would you lose out from not watching JJK 0? A little bit, but not a whole lot. Whereas if you just didn't watch Mugen Train, you're fucked.
Yeah, like JJK 0 is a good example of it will enhance what you know of the lore of a very actually important character and their journey. But at the same time, it is canon, and at the same time, it is not quote unquote required. Whereas Mugen Train is like, it's literally like in between. Like,
well, that's why, like, with those two, right, with Mugen Train and JJK 0, I don't consider those to be spin-offs. More so for Mugen Train, because that is legitimately part of how the manga is told. Whereas with JJK 0, yeah, like, it's not exactly, like, part of the storyline, but it helps to give more background information about certain characters that will show up in the series. So that's why I wouldn't consider those to be spin-offs. If you want to talk about, like, the king, the queen of spin-offs, though, look no further than the fucking Fate series.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Right? Kiliad Prisoner, right? Like, Fate Strange Fake.
Was it Carnival Tasium.
Akropova, whatever it's called, right?
Yeah.
Like there's so
Encore.
fucking many spin-offs. And the fact that like if you like were to be even more like pedantic about it, you would even consider that Unlimited Blade Works is a fucking spin-off.
Oh yeah, because it's different routes, right? Yeah. And
then the third one, whichever I keep
Heaven's Feel.
Heaven's Feel, yes.
And then what? Fate String Fake is not. I think the first episode, or what do you call it? Like episode 0 came out. We watched it. It was really good. We liked it. Can't wait. I legit can't wait whenever it comes out. Although I haven't heard anything from it recently.
Yeah, you've got Fate Grand Order, FGO. You've got Fate Apocrypha.
I mean, that whole Type Moon thing. If we talk about like Garden of Sinners as well, is just like this huge universe of just what is going on type thing.
I mean,
right?
if we were to just talk about
like Tsukihime,
that, okay, look, Fate Stay Night Unlimited Blade Works, Heaven's Feel, right? You also then have Fate Prototype. You got Fate School Life, Himuro no Tenshi, right? Then you also have, you have a lot. Fate Hollow Ataraxia, which, by the way, was not so much a spin-off, but it was a sequel because there was a certain character you couldn't fuck in Fate Stay Night. So then they made a sequel so you could fuck that character in Fate Hollow Ataraxia.
that's hilarious.
Then there's Fate Zero. There's Fate Tiger Coliseum. There's Fate Caleb.
The magical girl one. Yeah.
Fate Unlimited Codes. Fate Extra. Carnival Phantasm, which is the other one you mentioned, which is like the mishmash of all the other Type Moon properties.
And it's like comedic
The
skits.
Case Files of Lord El Malloy. There's also Fate Strange Fake. Fate Samurai Remnant.
Emiya? The really good slice of life cooking.
Forget, today's menu for the Emiya family.
So good.
There's so many fucking spin-offs for it, but you can find fans for every single one, but they'll still recognize the core of it, which is Fate.
Yeah.
Right? And so when you want to talk about like the state of spin-offs now, I think because the fact that studios are now not required to just run episode to episode and just create as much things as possible in one go, they are given a little bit more freedom in terms of exploring certain plot points. Or maybe there is a plot, but you want to give it a complete different twist, right? Legitimately, Cells at Work and Cells at Work Code Black are the same fucking thing, but one is a lot more happy-go-lucky slice of life, and the other one is dark and depressing and fucked up.
Yet both educational, all the same, right?
Right?
Then you get platelets.
What happens if someone gets a cold versus what if someone has cancer?
Yeah.
You know, like, oh shit, it's the same thing, but not really, you know?
Yeah. The spin-off kind of, I guess, discussion is one that is very varied and jumbled all over the place because there are so many good examples of almost every instance of quote-unquote a good spin-off or quote-unquote not a spin-off or quote-unquote okay.
I think it's because the fact that spin-offs from 10 years ago are vastly different from what they are now.
And,
right?
And what do you think that is?
Because the easiest comparison was this is basically just so-and-so anime, but chibi version.
Yeah.
Right? That was probably the one that you would just look at. Or this is like, oh, this is the same story, but from a different character perspective. Like, even Sword Art Online had that, right?
Mm-hmm.
With the movies, right? It told the same story, but from a different perspective.
And so then Progressive came out
exactly.
technically later,
so
but is like before.
Rather than looking at just Kirito, you're now looking at Asuna. And holy shit, people fucking love Progressive because the writing got better in that one. It was allowed for you to fill in the gaps of what happened between this particular level and that particular level. Yeah, the similar tropes are still there, right? You know, Asuna is still not like, you know, the Maiden of Honor where she's just like, you know, super powerful and what. That shit still exists, but at least gives you a different feel to the whole Sword Art Online story.
I mean, going over like series or IPs that have
and then don't forget fucking Gun-Gale Online.
Yeah,
that one would be the most clear of spin-offs when coming from the Sword Art Online series, because that shit literally has nothing to do with Sword Art Online, but they managed to integrate it in later seasons.
Yeah, and it's like set in the same universe or whatever, but it's like not like because I haven't watched it. It's not like it's like yeah, they technically could meet on the street and be like, oh, that's kind of a cool thing, but it's not like oh, they are like very much ingrained into one another, right? Intertwined, right? I think the other thing that is also quite interesting is the Monogatari series, because when
off season and monster season,
yeah,
right?
is that technically when you say like was it like the first, second, and final season?
I mean, the fact that one of the fucking series is called off season,
yeah,
right?
And
off is half the word of spinoff there.
Yeah,
so.
right. But then if you dug into it, you realize that it's like, okay, so it's like what? If you're a newcomer, right? You go, okay, first, second, and final. Okay, that's like, that makes so much sense. So after the final, that's it, right? And then it's like, well, no, because then you have like off season and then monster season that's getting adapted. And then you're like, yeah, but okay, so it's like sequel, right? It's like, yeah, kind of, but like they also have certain parts because they're all into arcs. Some of them are like inserted into the OG event timeline of the first, second, and final. Then you get the ones that are actually sequels. And it's just like what? So is it a spinoff or not? And I cannot answer that question because I actually don't know.
They also have family season as well, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So again, right? Like, what is even a spinoff at this point? And if you really want to try and boil it down, I feel that a spinoff offers the opportunity for a writer, a director, a studio to essentially expand the world, the lore, and certain characters that opportunity was not there in the first place.
Would you say Boruto is a spinoff, or would you say it's a sequel?
It's a sequel, but
there's no right or wrong answer, by the way.
I'd say it's a sequel.
Okay.
Is it a good sequel? It's up to
that's
you,
debatable, right?
You know,
but it's also changed hands, right? In terms of Boruto, the manga is done by the original assistant of Naruto.
And the thing with like Boruto is that when you think spin-off, there has to be at least certain elements within that particular series that offers it as a different, like, as a variation from the original source. Whereas you still have the same characters from the original Naruto and Shippuden going into Boruto. You just then have a younger generation, right?
Yeah.
I mean, if you want to say that, then like, would you say that like the subsequent seasons of JoJo's Bizarre Adventure are all spin-offs? Right? Because
very good question.
Right? And the biggest one actually is the 7th of the JoJo series, Steel Ball Run, because it is a complete revamp. They redo everything, set in an alternate universe.
Oh, wait. Don't.
No, that's literally like the first line of the synopsis.
Okay.
Right? Set in an alternate universe. Where do you go from there? Do we then consider like every iteration of like going from like, you know, Joseph Joestar to Jonathan? Oh, no, Jonathan Joestar to Joseph Joestar to then Jotaro Kujo to all the other JoJos and beyond, right? Are any of those then deemed spin-offs? No, it gets a lot more convoluted when you start talking it in that way. But the main thing is, when you have studios now, when you have writers who want to be able to create more worlds, more lore, and more characters for a series without essentially bloating the original main series, spin-off's not a bad thing to do.
Or overstressing the original creator because he or she's only one person, right?
Right? Like, what's the point in adding like 50 main characters into a series when you can't even tell like one good storyline for one of them? Might as well just focus on a couple core characters and then introduce other ones through a separate series, but still under the same series umbrella.
I mean, Harumi Suzumiya has spin-offs.
Yep.
I think one focuses on Nagato, and then I think there was another one. But
what about the whole bunny girl senpai? Like, you know, my senpai dreams of whatever.
Yeah.
Like, all those are like, how does that work out? Are they all like part of the same continuum? Is it like
yes.
is one directly a sequel of the other?
Yes.
Or is it
to my knowledge, the ones that I've read and seen, yes.
Yeah. So I think that, you know, the term spin-off definitely has transformed over the past 2 decades of anime and manga. Before, it was essentially just same shit but a different day. Now it's more, this is the same shit, but a completely different story or a completely different style, different tone. And by having that kind of exploration, by having that sort of deviation from how the original source packaged itself, you get offered a different perspective. You get different highs and lows. You get a whole different experience, but you're still watching something that is reminiscent of what got you into the series in the first place.
Yeah. I think if I had to boil everything that I'm trying to say down into like a sentence or two of what I'm trying to get at today in terms of this recording of this BP is, what does spin-off mean then? What does spin-off mean now? And does it even matter that there is such a thing of a term? And I think when you and I and a lot of people try our best, especially within anime and manga when we talked about like tags and stuff, to compartmentalize and classify stuff, there is always a push and pull and a struggle with, well, what counts and what doesn't. And it becomes subjective and, semantics at that point. And you just become like, it just becomes like redundant to even have these kinds of minute discussions that is so deviating from even talking about the property that it's like, why are we fighting over this?
Well, you also have to think about from the writer's perspective as well, right? Like, imagine writing one series and then creating spin-off stories or like over-branching stories from the original, right? Versus writing one series and then writing a completely new series and then writing a completely new series. If you already had something that started off as a banger and you added more onto it, it's a more safe, more surefire way of being able to continue getting viewership for your property. Whereas if you made something really, really good, it's not a surefire thing that the next thing you do is going to be really, really good.
Yeah. So would you agree to a certain extent that when there are tangents or spin-offs, right, there is a good amount of those that is not by the original creator? They usually have the blessing or the assistance or maybe even some of the input from the original creator, but it will give you a different take from a different person, whether it's a mangaka, a studio and stuff like that.
Yeah, I mean, like, it's not hard to argue against. Like,
right.
I mean, like, to argue with that, like, legitimately, like, if you have like the main mangaka or the main director focusing on one thing, to have them to also then do a bunch of other stuff at the same time, it can be very, very tough. Right? Like, that's why, like, more often than not, you may find people who are attached to the series in some capacity, then being given the blessing to go ahead and write a new story, write a new thing. I mean, shit, look at fucking Promised Neverland. Right? Like, would you then consider that season 2 to be a sequel? Or is it more of a spin-off because it actually had no input from the original creator other than them just supervising and giving the green light to say, go ahead, do this shit. I'm okay with it. You know?
Yeah, and on that note, right, in general, again, very broadly speaking, when it is not that creator, the original OG creator,
or even then, the One Piece,
Oda.
Is it a revamp? Is it a redo? Is it a spin-off? Because it's not covering everything.
Is it a reimagining? Yeah, but is that okay? Because
of course it's okay.
I would argue yes, it's yeah, you're fine to do whatever you want, but to get people to accept the spin-off, so to speak, I think is a much tougher endeavor.
I don't know. Is that what you're genuinely seeing online, or like how you feel people perceive it? I don't know. I don't think it's as negative as you.
I don't think it's as negative
as you're saying it is.
I mean, yeah, maybe I'm portraying it because I'm just always that pessimistic, but I also would argue that it is uncertain to the point where, think of like Blue Lock, for example.
I mean, shit, we spent a whole hour talking about what the fuck the point of the One Piece is.
Yeah.
Right? And in the end, it's like, they're going to do whatever they do. People are still going to watch it because it's One Piece.
And I'm actually really excited because that's like my way in at this point.
Yeah. So to ask somebody the purpose of a spin-off and whether or not it works for them, like it's contextual. You legitimately do not know if somebody is so gung-ho about a main series that they do not give a shit about other derivative forms of it. Then you also have people who just want to see as much as possible of a series that a spin-off can add to their liking of a character. It can give them a fresh new perspective on how to appreciate a series. Everybody has their own reasons as to whether or not a spin-off works for them. And I think that the way that spin-offs are done now versus 20 years ago, or even 10 years ago, it offers opportunity to view things from a perspective that did not exist in the first place. And I think that that's a cool thing to have, right? Like I should, like, now that you've mentioned it, I would recommend you at least just read one volume of Vigilantes. Because as much as there's been a lot of droll shit that comes up from My Hero Academia, especially in the latter seasons, and how people are feeling like it's kind of overstaying its welcome a bit, Vigilantes is a very fresh take, and I really, really like it. Does that mean that all spin-offs are going to be great? Absolutely not. There's going to be some real shit, like stinkers, that come out of from like spinning off a main series. But at the very least, the creator tried. The creator is offering you a different way of watching, reading, appreciating something that they originally created in the first place.
Do you think that a lot of spin-offs, I mean, again, this is so hard to say because you never really know in the creator's mind or how things work out, and sometimes it does and sometimes it doesn't, is when do you think a spin-off is forced versus when does a spin-off feels like it is very easily integrated? Because
that's a tough one to
yeah,
answer.
And I'm not trying to like find an answer now. In fact, it's not even possible. But to more have that discussion, like Gun Gale Online, right? Would you argue, because you've watched it, Gun Gale Online is quite far removed from the Sword Art Online universe?
Until, of course, you go into like the BBB arc of Sword Art Online.
But in essence, if I were to replace those names,
right? If they never mentioned the names of like Kirito, they never mentioned the world that like existed in like SAO,
like not deleting characters,
and you just watch Gun Gale Online, you would imagine it to be a completely separate thing.
Yeah,
right.
Like if I were to tell you after you watch Gun Gale Online and that's all you watched, and being like, "Did you know that that's part of Sword Art Online?" You're like, "What?" Like,
I mean, other than the fact that, of course, it has the word online in it, it has the same amount of syllables in there as well, right? Gun Gale Online, Sword Art Online. Like, yeah, you can tie that connection together, but you would also find people that completely just deride Gun Gale Online, and that it is not that it's inferior, it's just that it should not exist or it has nothing to do with Sword Art Online, therefore there's no reason to watch it. There's also people that absolutely love it and wish that there were more elements of Gun Gale Online. I mean, the fact that there's a
season 2.
Yeah, season 2 coming out, right?
But do you think one of the reasons why they have to tie it to Sword Art Online is to kind of give it a little bit of an assist, lift?
But that's what I mean in terms of like a creator, rather than writing a brand new series every single time, why not just write a spin-off based on something that already worked, right? So that's why like a lot of the Fate stuff, it works because it's tied to Fates. It has similar characters, it has similar storylines, but it's all just different plots, different universes,
and the crazy thing is with Fate is that the lore of the cycle of things is built into the lore, and a lot of these, like, you know, multiverses and whatever is built in such a way that it feels more organic of a transition to all of a sudden being like, oh yeah, so this is like this other thing, but it's like tied to it because of the whole like cyclical nature of things.
Yeah, I mean, let's take it a little bit away from anime and let's talk about like other forms of media, right?
Yeah, sure.
One that has been coming up more and more recently, actually has been like that for the last couple years, is the Pokemon game series.
Yeah, boy.
Right? So when Pokemon Legends Arceus came out, immediately everyone was like, this is very different. Rather than you walking in like a 2D or 3D plane, you know, catching Pokemon, beating masters, and going into
gym leaders,
and all that.
Yeah. Team Rocket.
This one now is a fucking isekai. You get sent back in time to a different fucking universe where you now have to work with Pokemon, but in more ancient times. and it's more like the over the shoulder kind of third person shooter perspective. You're running around and like you don't just sit there and you just have Pokemon battle it out. You actually can also go around and interact with your environment. There's a little bit of like a Legends of Zelda Breath of the Wild kind of element to it as well. And then now in the last Pokemon Direct that came out earlier this year, they're now doing Pokemon Legends Z to A or Z to A, which is again another iteration of this Legends spin-off. And these games were very well received.
Would you going off of those lines, right? Would you consider Gundam spin-offs?
I mean,
or iterations. I mean, look, I catch myself now. Like that's a really dumb thing to say.
I mean, there's Wing, right? There's IBO, Witch from Mercury, right? Like, are they all spin-offs? Technically, yes.
Yes.
They absolutely are spin-offs because they have nothing to do with the original series. They're all their own storylines, but what is the main thing that runs throughout every single one of them? There's a fucking Gundam.
Yeah.
Right? So,
and usually political intrigue and space combat of sorts.
Yes. Right? So, it's... The word spin-off now is becoming more and more convoluted because of the fact that writers just don't always want to create a new series. They just want to, use whatever worked for them and create something different.
And you can't fault people when you have something that is massively successful and you've dedicate your whole life to it or a majority and you want to switch gears and shift. And it's really hard to when you venture into unknown territory or expecting people to all of a sudden receive it as warmly of a reception if it was not tied to the series that you are known for example.
Yeah.
And
it's a very it's a very fine art in terms of trying to create something new but also maintain a level of viewership. There's two examples that we have, right?
Yep.
Tokyo Ghoul. Massively popular. Let's not talk about the manga, the anime, right? But then several years later, Chojin X.
Yep.
The fuck's happened to that?
Yeah.
What the fuck happened to that?
Yeah.
The core is still the same, right? You're talking about monsters and ghouls that live within society, and you have some overpowered hybrid of sorts that's going around and, trying to take them down, but also maintaining their human side.
Oh, you get like two dudes that are kind of reminiscent of two certain male main characters
in essence,
Tokyo Ghoul.
Chojin X is not a spin-off of Tokyo Ghoul.
It is not, yeah. Or at least to my knowledge.
But did it work? Absolutely not. Nothing has come out of it.
Okay.
It's doing okay.
And
it has,
and that's sad,
right?
Because it's not doing, I think, even how Soy Yoshida wants it to be. Because why is it that people are so excited for the 10th anniversary Tokyo Ghoul announcement
I'm really excited for that.
But at the same time, no one cares about Chojin X.
Well, shit, I read Chojin X, and it was just
I read
it, but you're also then like, this is just Tokyo Ghoul.
Except it's not, and I was like, it's all right, like it's fine, but like then would you think if you tied Chojin X to Tokyo Ghoul, like imagine a scenario, right, that Tokyo Ghoul Chojin X is essentially it's like the Gun-Get Online in that it's set in the same universe or after Tokyo Ghoul's events at the very end, and then there's the Chojin X storyline. This is a hypothetical, of course.
I mean, same thing when you want to talk about Bleach and Burn the Witch.
Yeah.
Right? They're both in the same universe.
Fucking, like, what the fuck is up with that? Even though I think there's something about Burn the Witch nowadays. I don't know exactly. It's, like, iffy. I don't know, because is it Kujo-sensei?
Yeah.
Is not in...
Kubo.
Kubo is not very good relationship with the publisher. I don't know how that's working out. But I think there's some new Burn the Witch stuff. I don't know. But yeah, you're right. Does that make that okay, better, worse? It's such a hard thing, and I think at the end of the day, what I have discovered in terms of my thinking is it is stupid and ancient to think of spin-offs as the way it used to be in my eyes.
Yeah. I mean,
I don't fault you or anyone.
There's obviously like opportunity for you to shun it, because if you are so gung-ho about like if what you have is an appreciation for the main series, and anything else beyond it is sacrilegious. I can completely understand that you would think that a spin-off is a derogatory form of the original work, that it offers no value, and that if you're going to add to the world of the main series, you just focus on the main series.
I mean, how many times have we or others have said, rather than, Megumin, explosion, whatever, just give me Konosuba season 4.
Well, it's coming out.
Well, season 3 is out, but but you know what I mean? Like, oh, instead of focusing on this, just give me more of that. Like, don't give me, My Hero Academia Vigilantes. Focus your efforts on, making, My Hero Academia proper good. That kind of, I mean, I'm just spitballing here, right?
I'm not of that camp. I'm completely like, if there's new stuff that is somewhat related but not really, I'll check it out. Shit, like, again, this is away from, like, anime and manga, but I really like the Kingsman series, right? Kingsman 1 was amazing. Kingsman 2 was okay, but what they did do was introduce the Statesman. And there were rumors that they were going to do
Is that Channing Tatum?
Yeah, the American counterpart of the Kingsman, right?
So dumb.
But
I kind of like it,
but
though.
It was amazing. And there were rumors that they were going to do a standalone spin-off of the Statesman.
Right.
Never happened. But I would have absolutely loved to watch it. Then they kind of reversed it and they did the King's Men. I think they did like a sort of like prequel series of it.
Isn't Matthew Vaughn the director of
so.
Kingsman, right?
Yeah.
Because he did X-Men First Class and a bunch of other really good movies. But yeah, like, I don't know. The thing with spin-offs nowadays in anime, manga, especially like, so, the anime / manga / light novel, The Saint's Magic is Omnipotent. There is a spin-off called The Saint's Magic is Omnipotent, The Other Saint, that focuses on, I don't know, maybe the other saint. And that's exactly what it is. There is like an Archdemon's Elf Bride that's airing this season.
Yeah.
There is literally another spin-off called The Elf Demon's Archdemon's Best Friend or something. That is a spin-off. And that focuses on different characters. Now, why did I mention all these? Is it good? It can be. But it's like an expansion. But the argument there is it better than that people spend more time because there's more stuff? Or is it a waste of time?
It's hard to say.
Or why does people give a shit? Well, because clearly people give a shit.
Well, I think it's because of the fact that people gave a shit about the original stuff in the first place that they might take a chance and see if they would also appreciate more stuff of the same thing, just in a different skin, as opposed to having something completely different and completely new and unrelated to the original. It's always easier to use the clout that you generated from your original series to continuously gain more traction and more viewership, as opposed to start fresh.
Yeah, and let's be clear. When you do something brand new, maybe the premise is not original in terms of being innovative, but if you're doing something new, it's a very scary, unknown endeavor.
Yep.
And I will not, as someone who literally started a podcast several years ago, sure, are you telling me that there's no anime and manga podcast in existence? Come on. But when we started it, there was hesitation. There is worry because you're venturing into the unknown.
I mean, when you want to go back into like anime and manga, right?
Mm-hmm.
Not everyone is an Akasaka, where they're such a good writer that they can make whatever they want and it'll be a banger. Dude, like when people came out and he said, "Oh, I'm gonna do Oshinoko." Of course, if you create a new property, there's going to be an air of like, let's see how it goes. But because you knew it was Akasaka, it was going to be good. And guess what? Oshinoko is fucking amazing.
Yeah, I mean, think about who she was, the mangaka for Full Metal Alchemist. I forgot her next work after Full Metal Alchemist. There is a serialization, but it didn't do very well. I think Naruto, the mangaka, then did another new property. I forgot what's it called, but it was very mid.
Yeah. So Hiromu Arakawa, the mangaka that did Fullmetal Alchemist, right? Subsequent works included Raiden 18, which ran for 16 years, actually. Hero Tales, Silver Spoon. They did Silver Spoon. Yeah. Kind of weird that the person who did one of the darkest shonen action series is also responsible for making one of the most lighthearted agricultural slice of lives.
And probably like the best, right? Yeah.
But it took a lot of trial and error in between to be able to make something like work. So it's always like venturing into the unknown that provides like an air of caution for people.
Samurai 8 is the name of the manga of the Masashi Kishimoto, who did Naruto.
Okay.
So that was like his next work after Naruto.
Never heard of Samurai 8.
Yep.
There you go.
Yep. Ran for like 3 years and kind of lost serialization.
But it's also probably because of the fact that, dude, like Naruto was so fucking big that any act following it was always going to be tough.
Yeah. And like,
I mean, let's look at it this way. If Oda decides, okay,
yeah, I was going to say that.
I'm ending One Piece right now. Give it like 3 years, I'm writing a new series. You would probably have people that are excited because it's Oda, but you also have people that are like, all I've known from Oda is One Piece. And anything else afterwards, I am completely uncertain of what to expect. Therefore, I'm a lot more cautious about approaching it. Whereas if they were just to continue making One Piece, it's a surefire win. It's hard. It's not always going to be like you have one Grand Slam and you're going to be guaranteed another Grand Slam by doing something completely different.
I mean, the Demon Slayer mangaka, she, I think, did like a space comedy or something, or announced something like that. I mean, I haven't heard anything from her, or at least how hotly received the property is, if it is being serialized or not, right? Like, is it like lightning in a bottle or not? I mean, Nishio is
yeah, because they said that, and this was a while ago.
Yeah, years
2021.
ago.
Like they mentioned that they were going to work on a science fiction romantic comedy story, which is what the fuck.
Like, sure, yeah, you can do whatever you want because you did Demon Slayer, but then on the other hand, it's like I haven't heard anything from that since. And like, does that mean then I would make, Demon Slayer 2 or something or whatever? I don't know.
Spin-off of sorts, right? Like,
yeah.
And that's why it's like you need to think of as well. It's like it doesn't surprise that if a mangaka wants to, they can just make a spin-off, because 3 years on from Demon Slayer, we haven't heard anything from what's her name? Gotoge, right? In terms of what this science fiction fantasy science fiction romantic comedy is going to be. No news of it whatsoever since then, right?
Yeah, and it's especially jarring when you are the person who made Demon Slayer, right? Like, that is such a big deal. Just like Oda with One Piece, just like Kentaro Sensei with Berserk. You are known for these.
You can even say Araki, right? After making so many seasons of JoJo's Bizarre Adventure, and when it is quite clear that the series needs to end, are you just going to pack up and then make something new? No, I'm going to continue writing more JoJo stuff, right? Like, and they're still doing it. I mean, fuck, JoJo 9 is out, right? So, are you going to fault them for wanting to continue making JoJo? No, it's because people absolutely fucking love JoJo. And so you can make any iteration of JoJo, and people are still going to read it, watch it, whatever. If you then say that Nishio then makes something completely different from Monogatari.
Well, he has. Like,
right?
I think Pretty Boy Detective Club, and
yes.
I think he has, like, several other ones. I think Katana Gatari, that I think is really well received. Things like...
Despite the fact that it's not streaming.
Yeah. There is, like, the novel, I think. So, like, look. There are instances of it's not a one-off lightning in a bottle type scenario, right? But it's such a difficult thing to remove yourself from a proper series that you are well known for, whilst at the same time making sure, like, the spin-off kind of, like, it does its due diligence, I guess.
It has to scratch that itch.
Yeah.
That's the main thing.
Like,
you can't just make more of the same thing and expect people to like it. just because it's the same thing.
Or just add fluff and then have it not make sense and then expect audiences to take it time and time and time again.
Yeah.
Maybe, but it's not going to work out most of the time.
Now, the other thing that you mentioned in the beginning of this recording was talking about movies, right? And so, when you talk about movies that come up from the Naruto series, movies that come in from the My Hero Academia movie,
Yep,
series.
that's also, yep.
Now, those are a completely different basket of eggs, right? Like, you have absolutely no deviation whatsoever from the main story, but it's also not the main story.
Yep.
So where does that shit lie, right? Like,
Exactly. Like, it...
have you watched any of those movies, by the way? Like, for example, like
I think the first one?
For
the one that they went on an island.
That one. And they have that scientist on there. And
It's like, oh, hey, All Might, remember me? I'm like the gadget guy. You're like,
that's the one I watched.
And I'm like, I don't fucking remember you from fucking anywhere, but sure.
Who the fuck is this guy?
But I guess, like, when the music kicks in and you do that hype shit, like, it's pretty good, I guess.
That one was called Two Heroes.
Yeah.
And then there was also, I think I also watched Heroes Rising.
Okay, we're going to spoil Naruto because fucking it's ages already. But some of those movies are, like, unnecessary.
There was one that was necessary.
Well, okay, there was one about Naruto and Hinata.
Yes.
That is compulsory.
Yes.
But at the same time, I'm like, how the fuck are you, like, wait, how many...
You could also say the same for, like, the first 15 One Piece movies as well.
Right. So, how many... I forgot. I don't even know how many Naruto spin-off movies there are. There's a handful, at least, right?
Definitely nowhere near as much as One Piece, though. One Piece milked the shit out of that.
Right.
There's like 17 movies from One Piece.
But to your knowledge, again, we might be wrong because we didn't watch all of it or whatever. But the one that I always remember in terms of Naruto movies, so not Boruto and all that stuff, is the wedding one. So
Naruto movies, there is Ninja Clash in the Land of Snow, Legend of the Stone of Galel, Guardians of the Crescent Moon Kingdom. This is all under Naruto. Then you have the Shippuden stuff. Naruto Shippuden, the movie. Bonds, The Will of Fire, The Lost Tower, Blood Prison, Road to Ninja, The Last. And then, of course, before Naruto then became Boruto, there was Boruto, Naruto the movie.
Right.
Which is a really fucking stupid name. It's like, you just had to make sure that Naruto was on there to make sure people knew that this is still Naruto. It's still Naruto, okay? But it's Boruto, but it's Naruto. You know?
and then it's to, like, ease the people in to be like.
But to be fair though, the Boruto movie was actually a banger. I actually quite liked it.
Oh really? I didn't watch it.
It was actually pretty good. But then watching Boruto, the anime series, was like, this is nothing like the first. I think it's just because they needed people to get acclimated to the new characters. They spent they spent like a whole season with each episodic episode just reintroducing rehash characters that were legit the children of previous characters from Shippuden and so on.
But I would say 95% of those Naruto films
watch it.
are but that's the problem that I kind of have with shonen action in a lot of these cases, because for better or for worse, shonen action has the biggest potential to have spin-offs because action, blockbuster, you know.
These are all geared towards kids and young adults who are going to be the biggest demographic to go to the theater and watch those movies. That's what those movies are for, right? It's not for you and me where, like, we don't really give a shit because, one, if we're going to watch a movie, it better be important to the story. Or at the very least, it's a spin-off and it offers like a new perspective on what we liked, not just a story that has no place in the original canon. That was a lot of movies that came out from My Hero Academia, One Piece, Naruto. You can fit in any other shonen action in there.
So does it being canonical make or break the spin-off in your eyes, in that, from what you just said?
I mean, it certainly helps.
Yeah,
right?
no, definitely.
If you have something that is at least tied into the original, then there's more of a reason as to why you want to watch it in the first place. If it's literally just a side story, okay, this is where it gets a bit difficult now.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah. I don't. It's.
That's why it's such a mess. It's because, as you said very aptly throughout this recording, is that it's not clear cut. It's convoluted. Doesn't mean it's bad or all good or all bad. It's like, what do we do with these types of variations, with these spin-offs? The easiest and probably the Occam's razor, the most logical answer is, if you like it, you like it. If you don't, you don't. If you want to consume it or not, it's up to you. If it is mandatory viewing, such as like the Mugen Train, to adapt it, then make it accessible or not, right?
Well, let's say, for example, that the Monogatari series had a movie that was not
Kizu.
canon. Well, that was not canon.
Oh,
Right? Is not part of like the Monogatari like actual like book series. Is not like off season, not like monster season, not like family season. It's just a movie about
whatever.
Araragi.
Yeah, sure.
Right? Or a movie about any of the characters.
Sure.
Would you watch it?
I can guarantee you my curiosity. I cannot guarantee you my consumption.
Bringing your ass to the theater and watching it.
Right, because then it becomes, how accessible is it? Then it becomes like the Mugen Train situation of, I understand that you want to milk it, but at the same time, it's good that then you turned it into a TV series so it's easier to access for a lot of people. But then, I don't know, like with the Monogatari one, the most logical one that I can think of that would really pique my interest is if they focus on Gaien, Kaiki, and
like
Meme.
if there was a whole Kaiki off series, like just Kaiki doing detective shit,
or like the three of them, or three or four of them, like the older generation, like a prequel, basically, right? It's like JJK 0 in that sense, right? Because JJK is the senior guy before the story proper starts.
Yeah. Would you watch a standalone movie just focused on Meme?
It would hinge on one very important thing, is Nishio writing it. Because with Monogatari in particular,
let's say Nishio is writing it.
His penmanship is, then.
But if it was just a blessing handed off to someone else,
I would be very skeptical, extremely skeptical.
You'd still be intrigued because it's Meme and it's Monogatari, but at the same time, is it going to be the same thing if it's not written by by Nishio, right?
I would probably not watch it. I'll be very honest. If I have to give you like my gut reaction right now, because
what if it's just streaming? What if it's on Crunchyroll now?
Probably not.
Still wouldn't watch it. What if it got like an 8.5 on Mal?
Well, then that will be different, because there will be indication that there is some sort of because other people have
no prior knowledge at all, other than it just being a spin-off of Meme Oshino from Monogatari series, but not written by Nishio himself, but written by someone else. Your initial gut reaction would be pass.
Yeah. But if it gets like an 8.5 or whatever, right?
So even the power of Monogatari itself, it's still within the mainstay of the series, just not canon. That isn't enough for you to be like, yeah, I'll watch it. You still have reservations over it.
Yeah, and I'll explain why. Because in that particular instance, it will dampen, not ruin, but lowered my appreciation of the Monogatari series.
That's how much regard you put them, where it's like anything that can be done to at least desecrate it by like a minute level is catastrophic for you. Because
I had such high expectations, or I would have. So either I have high expectations going in.
You are literally not in the middle kind of guy. You're either
I'm never
really low or really high on something.
I mean, you've known me for so long. When have I ever been middle of the road?
Yeah, that's why like maybe asking this question to you is a bit tough, because you are pretty strong.
Or it's very easy because I just will probably make a decision. But but when I convey it, that's like the tough part for me, because I'm really bad at conveying how I feel sometimes. I mean, when we walked out of the Haikyuu movie.
Yeah, the fact that you were shitting on it so much, but you still gave it an 8 out of 10. I was like, did you like it or not then?
But then over our discussion, you kind of see where I'm coming from. But the way that I expressed it was almost with such
disdain.
But the words that I'm saying, or what I eventually portrayed to you as like, dude, you made it sound like it was a 6 out of 10, but the words you were saying or the things you were saying makes it an 8 out of 10. What the fuck is going on, Jason? And I'm like, I guess you're right.
Yeah, I think, to sort of like bring it back to the whole spin-off / movie discussion here that we have, you're going to continue seeing this, right? Because it's literally an industry standard that if you have a popular property, you're going to find ways to be able to generate more revenue out of it by, I mean, shit, dude, we haven't even talked about fucking video games of the series, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like there are some video games that, for example, like a lot of the Naruto and Bleach games that legitimately follow the same storyline as the series, whether it was in manga or anime. Then you have stuff which is just, like fighting games, right? Like the Naruto Next Generation or whatever it's called.
I mean, Final Fantasy VII has that remake, but don't forget Advent Children was technically a spin-off anime movie that came out a long time ago.
Which was also fucking fantastic. There was also that PSP game.
Well, it was all right. Crisis Core. That focused on Zack.
I quite liked it.
I like Crisis Core.
The ending was great. I love the ending of that.
And so it's like, and like, what is Final Fantasy anymore? It's like it's a brand. It has certain identifying things.
It's also gotten a little bit lazy in the fact that they just keep focusing on Final Fantasy VII. For me, it's just because of the fact that I would have liked for them to, if they're going to revamp a particular game.
10? No, you want 6. I know, but I don't think a lot of people would. I think 6 would be the most interesting one.
No, because it's those are the two. The most favorite series of Final Fantasy are 6 and 7. Because the story is the most rich out of those two. I do love 10 though, but that's mostly because of Blitzball.
I like,
and also because Nobuo Uematsu's soundtrack for 10 was fucking phenomenal.
I really like X too, but that's just me, I guess.
You just like
Dress Spheres. I fucking think it's amazing.
So why don't you like idol shows then?
I kind of do, I guess. I don't know. I don't fuck with all of them.
That's a spin-off, right?
No, that's more like a different genre at this point, right? With Love Live and all that crazy stuff.
No, I'm talking about X2. That's a spin-off.
It is.
Yeah. And it worked for you.
It worked for me. But, like, I don't know. Like, with anime and manga, it's also easier of a proposition to do spin-offs when it is in light novel and manga form because it's just cheaper.
Yeah.
And it's less intricate and less manpower. Not saying that those mangakas and authors don't put in work. In fact, it is not. They do put in a lot of work and take hiatus after hiatus due to their health and have all these burdens and pressures and stressors. But it is way less complicated because you don't have to worry about animation, 3D, color. Like, you know what I mean? Like, it's just less people involved, so it's a much simpler proposition to transition to a spinoff, right? But
I mean, I know this is a BP, but if we were given time,
I mean, we can still keep going until our food arrives.
Well, it's over an hour now.
Fuck
yeah.
I think we're going off tangents.
Well, I think we were good up until like the 45th minute mark, and I was like, what about movies? And then all of a sudden now we've just talked for an extra half hour. It's like, oof. But what I was going to say was that, like, if we were given time to properly research and actually, check out more of these spin-offs, this itself could be like a full-blown discussion in terms of spin-offs in general and talking about series that branched off from, original mainstay series.
What do you think? Do you think
it could be? I mean, let's see. I mean, one, first of all, you need to clear up your backlog and also get ready for the summer season. There's a lot of shit coming up, and then when summer's done, fall's coming through, and there's a lot of bangers for that one. It's not gonna happen, but hey, we could still try, right? We don't know like whether or not talking about more spin-offs is going to be something that people want to listen to. Let's just see how this particular episode works, and if people are intrigued and do want to hear more about it, we'll make a decision then.
All right. So that being said, do you have any final thoughts you want to talk about to kind of wrap up as much of a different tangents as we went off of, like how you feel if you want to kind of condense most of the stuff that we talked about?
I would not have any hesitation in watching a spin-off series but it also then seems kind of contradictory on my end when I don't want to watch a movie that, despite not being canonical, is still part of this. It's it's like it's the whole calling the kettle black kind of thing, where it's just like, I'll do it for this particular style, but not for this particular style, even though they're both kind of the same thing.
I agree, and I think the fact that you are conflicted or you feel like you yourself are a bit hypocritical is very describing the current state of what we would call tangent spin-offs, offshoots, right? Because it used to be similar to how people like you and I would define filler episodes back then. It now either doesn't really exist or it has a different kind of meaning and connotation. Spin-offs, when 20 years ago to 15 years ago, had a connotation of cashing out, had milking the audience dry, trying to do something with the least amount of effort possible. I think that mentality back then, that is mostly accurate in terms of the mindset.
Yeah.
But nowadays, people have either gotten better at making offshoots, tangents, or better integrated.
Or I think a simple answer is, if fans like something, they'll want to watch more of it. So like, I've actually just pulled up some box office stats for My Hero Academia's movies. World Heroes Mission, which was the last one that came out in 2021 before the new one comes out later on this year. At the time it released, it was the 10th highest grossing domestic film in Japan of that year. It actually generated way more opening day sales than Heroes Rising, the one that came before it. And now we've got My Hero Academia, Your Next, premiering in Japan on August 2nd, 2024. So, despite what you and I feel about these kinds of movies coming out, clearly it works in Japan. Clearly people still love watching these movies. The fact that with each movie that comes out, the box office keeps going higher and higher and higher. Can't deny that they found a working formula. And that's why you're not going to see these things go away. I think these are a necessity for the field because you need to make money somehow, right? And if the movies themselves are generating that much revenue for you, you're going to keep doing it. Whether or not people like you and me care about it or not, because you and I are in the minority, right? We're not the ones rushing to go watch the movies because there's already 100 million other people who are going to be doing that.
I just think that whether we like it or not, the fact of the matter is the quote-unquote archaic old way of thinking about spin-offs is not applicable or even, I would argue, helpful to be retained for people that, such as myself, who used to have that really headstrong kind of mindset. And to make it even more complicated, it's not black and white.
No.
And there are
any of our discussions black and white?
And that's the whole point of bits and pieces. Wouldn't you say?
Yeah. There's never going to be a definitive answer as to what spin-offs are and what their purpose is and whether they're still relevant to this day. Because spin-offs have taken on a very, very polymorphous form. You can't really just look at a movie and be like, that's just a continuation. That's just a non-canonical, that's a spin-off. Well, what is a spin-off really then? Right? There is no definitive answer to this question, which is probably why it made for a good discussion in the first place.
Yeah, we kind of got there. I kind of struggled in the beginning, but, you helped me out. Appreciate it. And after all of that, we are going to spin off into our housekeeping script. So thank you for listening to this episode of the Good Anime Pal podcast. I won't really get into our show notes and stuff, but what I will say is our intro music for this episode is, just hold on a second, it is Orange by SINY.
SINY,
SINY, SINY in all caps. And the music track is Orange. And our outro music is Weeping by Cushy. You can support the music artists that we feature by listening to them on Spotify, Apple Music, or your music listening platform of choice. and our royalty-free music was provided by Epidemic Sound. If you're interested, you can always sign up using the referral link in our show description. Terms and conditions apply.
This turned out to be a pretty good topic. I saw you were kind of not conflicted, but you were trying to figure out which one you wanted to roll with, and I'm glad you picked this one.
Yeah, it was just kind of tough because when there are so many different tangents you can kind of go off of,
it's hard to keep things concise, right? It's hard to have like a through line in terms of how we're going to navigate this discussion.
But then at the same time, if we do that, then it becomes, as you said, like, oh, this could be like an EP of sorts or an AD.
It becomes a bit too formulaic.
Yeah,
basically.
But then I wanted, like, let's see what we can grab. And I think at the end of it, we even got an possible idea for an EP or an AD from it. So
does that mean we're going to have to watch all of the One Piece movies?
No.
I wouldn't mind, actually. To be fair, like, again, just because I'm not interested in something doesn't mean I'm not going to like it, right? It just means that there's other things that, take precedence over it.
No. You see, what we have to do is to prep for the next Gundam, we have to watch all of the Gundams up to current.
Yeah, I've got some friends who are super hardcore Gundam fans. Too bad that they only speak Cantonese, so that I can't bring them onto the podcast and talk about it.
Well, you can. We just have to, like, live translate or something?
Oh, yeah. I mean, there's definitely no subtitles for our episodes, unfortunately. It's only dub.
Yeah. It's only dubbed in English. So, that being said, I think that is pretty much it for this BP. Will, any last words before we end the recording?
Do you want to go watch Mobile Suit Gundam Seed Freedom?
I don't even know what the fuck that is.
That's the movie that just came out last month.
No.
Not even for a spin-off discussion?
No.
Okay. That's how we still feel about spin-offs then.
At least in Gundam's case, yeah.